I'm live. Hello. Today is day 22 of Queer Quarantine, and I'm Sweet Gwendolyn. And this is Doggy Rita on the floor. Would you like to get a treat and say hi to your public, Rita? Jump up. Come on. Your fans want to see you. Here we go. Jump up. All the way. There we go. You may notice I have a microphone right in front of me. This was actually a Christmas present from my brother that it completely did not occur to me I could use for this vlog. So that's what's going on right here. And anyway, yeah, I've got a lot of stuff to go over because it's been a few days since the last one. In a nutshell, just the way I've been trying to format it is that I'm going to go over. Whoa, hey. I'm going to go over the numbers for the virus at the very beginning. Going to lump the virus related news right after that. So anyone who finds maybe the numbers too depressing, or even more broadly the topic of the virus itself too depressing, can if you're watching live, you can mute this part, or if you're watching the video, you can just jump forward a little bit and see what I'm talking about. And there's actually some positive news related to the virus, which I'll have kind of right in the middle as I transition. So let's see. The opening numbers. So obviously they're going up, up, up. In the world, there are 1,850,000 infected. And there are 114,000 dead. So in the US, which we are the world's largest contributor to that number, that we have just over 550,000 infected and just a few cases under 22,000 dead. We also had our first day where 2,000 people died in a day just the other day. Here in Texas, there are 13,500 infected and 276 dead. And here in Travis County, there are 744 infected and 9 dead. So yeah, starting off with some virus-related news, things are taking a little bit of an alarming turn because, of course, shutting things down, that's bad for business. We got to make our bucks. And so at this point, they're talking about opening things up very prematurely. It's not good on the national level, and it's extremely bad on the Texas level. Nationally speaking, Trump literally said that because their decrees are everything's in place on the national level until April 30th. And so he's going to have to decide towards the end of the month if they're going to extend them or if they're going to just start opening the country back up. And alarming to many people was his insistence on the fact that while he would listen to experts, a lot of it comes down to instinct, being his instinct, and probably the instinct of his billionaire buddies. So more alarmingly, much more alarmingly, here in Texas, where, of course, our Lieutenant Governor, Dan Patrick, said just a week or two ago that we should be willing to sacrifice our grandparents for the sake of the economy. Here, Greg Abbott said, this was several days ago, so it's 2 weeks from when he said it several days ago. He was planning to start opening the state back up, and the details would be coming next week. So in the next day or two, imagine we'll have some details. He is just, shutting things down. It's bad for business. We got to accept some people are going to die and keep going. And that's bad. That's very bad. I mean, it's no surprise, I guess, coming from the guy who already, put out a decree that overrode all of the local ordinances on religious services. He did have some language in there that they should try and live stream. whenever possible, but he left the door wide open for any religious service that people felt that they couldn't have online, they could have in person. Okay, so I guess that was some nice red meat for his base, and at least in his imagination, I guess he figures that having everything opening back up, and keep in mind, like everywhere else, I mean, people are assuming we won't start opening up till late May, maybe even somewhere in June. And he is hands down the only person in this entire country who is talking about doing this still within April. I don't know. I mean, like, I literally hope there's a revolt. I mean, most people do not feel comfortable or safe going to their jobs. I mean, that was like a very amazing transformation when things were, unfolding very rapidly at the beginning for a couple of days there. Oh, you were really lucky if your job stayed open, and then rapidly it was like, oh, fuck, I have to risk my life for my job that does not pay enough for this. So anyway, I'll provide updates as those come in. Similarly, in Florida, Governor Mike DeSantis, this is the same guy who insisted on keeping the beaches open during spring break and has had a lot of the same sort of rhetoric about keeping churches open and all that. He falsely claimed the other day that the virus hasn't killed anyone under 25, and he's considering reopening schools. And while it is true that it's not affecting school-age children as much as it is the rest of the population, there absolutely have been deaths in that age range. And on top of that, far more to the point, they can be carriers. That's how the virus will spread. Parents still have to pick them up also and drop them off. And teachers and staff still have to go to their jobs. I mean, it's a horrible idea. And he is the only governor in the entire country who's even considering opening schools back open. Like, pretty much universally throughout the country, we've all agreed schools are just shut until they open again in late August or September, depending on your district. So then there was some news that was just so heartbreaking. I can't really get into it. I just would like to acknowledge that this is happening, which is that ICE is totally horrible, and a lot of people in their custody are going to die, and jails are not much better. I'm on a mailing list where I get some information on Texas jails, part of a criminal justice reform group I'm a part of. And yeah, it's just a bad situation. And keep in mind, in this country, 70% of the people behind bars have not even been convicted of a crime. They're just people who could not afford bail. And actually, on that note, Greg Abbott is being sued by the ACLU because he mandated in Texas, just pandering to his base, never mind what the law is, that judges cannot, excuse me, that they cannot offer bail to anyone accused of a violent offense. Well, generally, judges have the ability to set bail. And I mean, even if you're accused of murder or whatever, I mean, your bail may be like $2 million or something, but it's still there. And it also just takes, so people who've been accused of violent offenses are allowed to make bail. And let's also keep in mind that, there's case by case basis. I mean, people just, there are so many bizarre charges and what considers violent. I mean, everyone immediately thinks, assault, battery, murder, sexual assault, that sort of thing. And there's like a million dumb ass things out there that excuse me, I'm fine. But yeah, there's always stuff that is like not the stuff that you are thinking of. So anyway, that's totally illegal. The ACLU is suing him, and hopefully that will get cleared up. And then, oh, and also on Texas being sued, note the the abortion thing is still playing out. Interestingly, in most of the other states in the country that have tried to get away with the putting a moratorium on all abortions, the judges have ruled in favor of allowing abortion to continue. But Texas is not the case, and it just depends like what part of the country you're in and which circuit court of appeals here's the case. But the good news there is that the judges ruled that non-surgical abortions, that being the pill RU486, is that sort of, because I mean the claim was, oh, we need to keep the medical supplies and doctors and nurses all available. Well, that's literally a pill you take at home. That excuse doesn't apply. So the court correctly allowed that. And this is the real relief, is that they've ruled that any abortion that's coming up against the 22-week cutoff, those abortions can go ahead and move forward also. So it's like a mixed bag, but it's still winding its way through the courts. And then, oh, I should have put this one's a little bit of a bummer, but I should have put this up with the numbers at the beginning. But the last news directly related to the virus is that New York City is going to start counting the deaths of people who die at home and in non-hospital settings because they weren't. You had to basically die in a hospital for your death to be counted towards the coronavirus total. So, and then they looked at the numbers and saw that apparently 8 times as many people died in New York City in the last 2 weeks as had in the last at the same period last year. So I guess that's positive. I mean, but it's going to make the numbers jump. They're saying it'll probably make it 70% higher than what is currently being reported. So that will appear awful. And I mean, but they're not the only place in the country where that's happening. And I do understand that just because someone has a virus related death doesn't mean that they had it. Did they need medical treatment, but they were so afraid of going to a hospital, because they might contract the virus that they didn't go, or, were they not able to get their medicine or food, or just, were they socially isolated to the point that their depression took over? There's a lot of reasons that you can die from the virus without directly having it. But yeah, just the death toll going on in New York City, it's hard to imagine that it's and the infection rate, it's hard to imagine that it's not much worse. So, all right, that's the last piece of sort of negative news directly related to the virus. We have 2 pieces of, I guess, neutral to good news. One is that Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister of the UK, is he was in the ICU for 3 nights, and then he stayed in the hospital for another day or so afterwards. But he has now been released from the hospital, which, as much as he's a total bastard and has caused irreparable harm, both regarding the virus as well as just his Brexit policy, it's a horrible, horrible, horrible death, and I don't want anyone to have to experience it. And the other piece of good news is, man, are his actions under scrutiny in the UK. I mean, this is the jackass who was running around saying, I'm not going to stop shaking hands. I mean, obviously that's how he got it, but how many people did he infect? I mean, like, not just his crappy policies in terms of just refusing to take it seriously and put measures in place to prevent it from spreading, but how many people did he personally infect himself? So I'm glad he's being held accountable. All right, so moving on to other stuff. This is, I mean, at this point, everything in the world sort of ties into the virus on some level, but this is not so much about the toll of death and destruction. But what's interesting is that, I mean, this is obviously negative and awful, but there's something about strength in numbers. 1/3 of apartment renters were unable to pay their rent on April 1st. And there are a lot of buildings where the entire building is going on rent strike. Just like, I don't know why landlords think they should be the only people who aren't affected by this. even in the places where evictions are on hold, the landlords are still saying, if you don't give us like, double or triple or whatever it is, rent, and they still get to collect late fees. If you don't give us that, we're going to, once the eviction thing is lifted, we're going to kick you out. And like, who do you think is going to take their place in your building? The 1/3 of other renters who couldn't pay their rent. It's tough on everyone. I would just suggest seeking some relief. I don't know. Technically, I rent to my roommate. We used to be renters together, and then I was able to buy the house that I'm in right now. And, I still think of her as my roommate, but technically I am her landlord as I rent to her. I totally accept the fact that there might be an issue. She is able to work right now, but stuff's happening. She might not be able to pay full rent at some point, and I will totally work with her. I don't understand why other people are having trouble with the same concept. I don't know. Maybe I was just really lucky as a renter. I would say that for 12, yeah, 12 of my 18 years or so as a renter, I had great, totally fair, honest landlords. Is the benefit of when you rent one-on-one, as opposed to, from some heartless, soulless management company. But yeah, maybe I just didn't realize how much landlords are total bastards. They certainly seem to be pretty universally hated. Anyway, this is something that's really cool. As much as I find the rent strikes to be inspirational, get this. All right. Spain is about to become the first country in Europe with a universal basic income, meaning they haven't figured out what they can afford, but basically every single person in Spain will get a check from the government every month in their bank accounts. That just gives them, I presume it'll be like a few $100 or something, but that will be wonderful. And, what's crazy is the articles I keep reading keep saying, oh, like this is some big experiment out in the world, but it's not. It's just a different name because in a lot of the oil-rich countries, and I'd like to emphasize in Alaska as well, the citizens all get dividend checks from the oil revenue. So if you live in Alaska, you actually get a check for, my friend in college, hers, and this is in the early to mid 90s, her monthly check was in the, I think, $3,000 to $7,000 range a year, and it just depended on what the price of oil was. So, it helps. Everything helps. So it's not like a radical experiment that has never been on US soil or tried anywhere else in the world. It was just a different name with a slightly different means of funding it. So in positive local news, the Austin Independent School System is rolling out 110 buses equipped with Wi-Fi to school bus stops and apartment complexes in Austin because, of course, the problem with having moved schools online for the rest of the school year is that there is a major privilege gap. A lot of people don't have Wi-Fi at home, and you can't go to the library anymore. So the idea, obviously it would suck to have to do your homework at a school bus stop or sitting in a car or whatever for the Wi-Fi access, but it at least is something where previously there was nothing. And obviously the kids in apartment complexes where the signal will reach them in their own apartments will have the best situation there. Also in interesting, and I personally would consider to be positive news, a Rutgers and Ipsos poll this week found that the approval of Trump's handling of COVID-19 has dipped down to 42% after hitting 48 the week before. I just felt like my head was exploding. It's like he's done literally almost everything wrong, and his approval was, I know 48% is I mean, academically speaking, still an F, but it was good for him, you know? It just the fact that it went up. So yeah, it temporarily went up 1 week. It went right back down once people have started noticing that he's sucking. And his overall approval rating is at 40%, which is more or less where it's been for most of his presidency. So, moving on to just a couple of totally unrelated pieces of news. I'm going to start out with a really sweet and positive one. And I'm going to apologize sincerely if I am mispronouncing her name because I've never heard it spoken before. But Auli'i Cravalho, who is best known as the voice of Moana in the Disney Pixar movie, has come out as bisexual. And it was really cute and really sweet. Although I never thought I'd see the day where someone used Eminem to come out as bi. But he has some song where I guess he meets a woman who identifies herself as bisexual and also checking out women, the same women he's checking out. And so anyway, she you know, lip synced the lyrics and then posted the video of that to Instagram or whatever. But anyway, it was just cute and sweet. And hey, here's to bisexual visibility, right? In other news, Bernie Sanders unfortunately suspended his presidential campaign. I'm not totally sure why. The guy who was for universal health coverage is not winning. And the guy who is explicitly against it and also thinks pot should be illegal and does not seem fully mentally intact and has a pretty serious sexual assault accusation against him right now. How he won, I don't know, but that happened. And speaking of sexual assault, Harvey Weinstein is facing new charges. So that's great. I mean, on some levels, you might normally say that's awful, but we already know he did it. So it's great that he's being charged. And also, on a similar note, Linda Tripp just died. And I don't know if you remember her, but that goes back to the Bill Clinton, Monica Lewinsky issue, which ultimately led to Clinton's impeachment. And what happened was she was actually at the time known as the most universally despised or hated woman in America, which I would just really hope that as America has incredibly belatedly re-examined their reaction to Monica Lewinsky in wake of the Me Too movement, I hope that Linda Tripp will get the same reassessment. Essentially, what happened was she secretly recorded Monica Lewinsky telling Linda about her affair with Bill Clinton, which lasted for a year and a half. And Linda Tripp, I believe quite correctly, came to the conclusion, because there had been other women who had come forward when he ran for president. She came to the conclusion that he was, at best a sexually exploitative person, and at worst was a serial assailant. And she definitely did it in the spirit of blowing the whistle. I don't really agree. I mean, generally the ethical tactic is that you're supposed to let victims tell their own story at their own time if they want to. And ironically, she ruined the life of the person, Monica Lewinsky, who she was trying to protect. And I do believe she was sincerely trying to protect her. So, but at the same time, I've also been in the situation where I was sworn to secrecy about someone who I did know was a, serial sexual offender, and knew that they were still a danger to other people. And that is a horrible situation to be in. So I feel like, she did not deserve to be the most universally despised woman in America, and that she tried to do the right thing in a situation where there were no obvious right answers. So may she rest in peace, and my condolences to her family. And I think that's it for headlines. So yeah, let's move into some personal stuff. I'm still walking Rita daily. I am practicing my Spanish daily, and I have been reading. I'm going to give you a book report probably tomorrow, certainly whenever the next time I get back on here is. I finished Patti Smith's book, Just Kids, and I went on a cooking adventure and I performed last night, obviously in in my own house. But yeah, so let me tell you about those last two. So with the cooking, I'm going to give you the recipe, and I know it's going to sound really fancy and pricey and expensive and labor intensive, but it was actually incredibly easy. And it really only comes to about $5 a portion, maybe less, certainly less if you already have some of the ingredients on hand. But what I did was and this doesn't have to be grilled, I just happen to have a grill, and I haven't used it since I moved. So I got some salmon and asparagus and I coated it in olive oil and grilled it. And I definitely got enough to have about at least 3 portions worth. And I served it with basically what I did was I melted some butter and put some blue cheese in it. So the blue cheese melted with the butter, and then I put some lemon juice in it, and then I poured it all over the fish and the asparagus, and it's really good. It's really, really, really good, but it's remarkably affordable as much as people think of, asparagus and salmon as being very la-di-da. Um, Honestly, a $10 salmon fillet, it depends on how much you can eat in a sitting, but for me, that's 2 to 3 servings, and, a thing of asparagus. A bundle's about $4. You might already have olive oil and butter at home, and then that leaves and you might already have lemon juice at home too, and you might already have blue cheese at home, but if not, a container's just a few bucks. So anyway, that was awesome. I highly recommend it to anyone who'd like something. I hear that everyone's getting really into cooking right now, so that's my recipe to share. And then just to wrap this up, I totally performed last night. It was really fun. It was the first time I've been in drag since I since I performed in November, which is like literally the longest I've been out of drag since I started performing about 6.5 years ago. I was packing up and moving and getting settled in and all that. But yeah, it was great. And I just finished editing the video. So at this rate, I think it'll be up tomorrow. I might tweak it a little bit more, but it wasn't a drag routine. It was actually a recitation of a comedy writing exercise. I do plan to get into stand-up comedy. I actually was planning on getting into it and going to open mics exactly right now. And I obviously don't have that opportunity. And I am a member of a local queer disability group. And so we had an online open mic for people in our group. And it's essentially a exercise where it's to help you crank out as absolutely as many jokes as humanly possible on a certain subject. I got my parents to suggest 2 subjects just to make it, because if you're coming up with your own subjects, your brain's going to go somewhere that it's been before and choose something you're familiar with. So I wanted just something totally random to see if this formula really worked, and it totally worked. I came up with 6 solid minutes of jokes on billy goats and garden gnomes. And so I just recited the whole thing. I'm going to get that up tomorrow. It's going to be, I'll put it on YouTube, but the easiest place to find it, because it's not going to be on this channel, it's going to be on my performer channel. The easiest place to find it is on Facebook, where my page is sweet. It's literally, this is the entire thing, Sweet Gwendolyn / Debbie Penetration, because I perform under both names depending what I'm doing. And it's got a picture of Homer Simpson dressed as Divine for the, what is it, avatar, whatever icon. And anyway, I think that's everything. I feel like I covered a lot of territory. thank you very much for sticking with me all this time. I can't wait to hear this and see how the microphone sounded, but I have the little, volume lights at the bottom indicating a signal's been coming through the whole time, so that's good. And, oh, hi, Kara Moore. Sorry, I was looking at my notes, so I didn't see you say hi earlier, but thank you. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate that. And, I guess that's it for now. Oh, wait, that's right. I have trouble ending gracefully. Will I do it gracefully tonight? Yes, I think this is it. All right. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.